What I'm bringing you today, it's a little slightly different to what I'm used to bringing into this channel. Normally we talk about creepy stuff, crimes, and mysteries, but today, surprisingly, no one died, no one vanished, and there is no killer clown involved. No, this time the victims were part of something much weirder. A very weird experiment run by an Austrian psychoanalyst and an adoption agency that clearly skipped the Ethics 101 chapter. Today I'm here to tell you the story of three boys separated at birth as part of an experiment that nowadays would be more illegal than actually pirating movies in 2025. So the boys Eddie, David, and Robert knew obviously they were adopted, but they would have never thought they were part of a secret human experiment created to test how genetics and influence can have a part in human development. The three of them were separated at birth like they were free sample snacks, and each one was adopted by a complete separate family, which nowadays usually, I think it's illegal. I don't know in which countries, but in most of the countries it's illegal to separate the brothers and sisters. But the fun part about this story is that neither of them, nor the adopted parents or the actual adopted kids, knew about this experiment. They had no idea until one day, plot twist of a very low budget soap opera, fate decided to bring them together, and little by little the whole web of secrets lies some very questionable methods behind their actual separation started to unravel. Because of course the more they dug into their past, the darker the story became, eventually discovering that they were used as lab rats in an experiment so shady it would make a comic book villain blush. So welcome to another Beauty and Crime Sunday with me, in which I do my skincare while I talk about the chilling cases I found this week. And today we have a creepy experiment in hand. So let's get into it. Grab your skincare and let's go. This whole saga starts in 1980 when one of the three brothers starts his very first day at the Sullivan College, which was located in New York. Robert starts walking through the hallways, carrying his bag just very normal, just trying to find his room, you know, so he can unpack, breathe, think about his new chapter in life. But then something weird happens. Even though it's literally his first time ever going into that college, people are stopping him the whole time he's trying to get into the dorm. Students he has literally never seen in his life, and they are waving him like he's the most popular person at school. And sure, that's pretty flattering, except Robert had never been popular in his whole life. He was very nervous, very confused, and probably wondering if he had become famous overnight. He keeps walking, trying to find his room, and people are just coming up to him and saying things like, "How was your vacation? Dude, what's up? You back already?" Everyone is smiling at him, being super friendly, suspiciously friendly for him. So Robert's like, okay, I know people are usually very polite, but this level of greetings, it's a little too suspicious for me. Something is very off. And then the truth slaps him right across the face when someone calls him Eddie. Okay, now I know for sure that's not my name. So I think they're getting me confused with someone else. They're not saying, "Oh, hi, new guy," or "Hey, you look a little lost, do you want some help?" They say, "Hey, Eddie." That's when Robert realizes this is not a hospitality festival. They're confusing him with someone else that probably looks a lot like him, right? But finally Robert gets to his dorm. He starts unpacking, probably thinking, wow, college is wild, when suddenly, knock knock, it's his roommate. And then that's when destiny goes, time for chaos. By a cosmic coincidence, Robert's roommate was the best friend of Eddie, the one that they were getting confused him about. So Michael, the guy, takes one look at Robert and basically short circuits. He turns pale and starts trembling. So this is a little bit of a reaction because what Michael is looking at, it's not just a resemblance. It's the same fucking person. It's a doppelganger, a photocopy of Eddie. Years later, actually, Michael said, when I met Robert, I started shaking. I went pale. He had the same smile, the same hair, and the same expression. The first thing that came to my mind was to ask him if he was adopted. Not, hey, what's up? Where are you from? Not straight up, are you adopted? Robert probably is still very confused because that's a very weird question to ask. Answer is, yeah, I'm adopted. Then Michael fires question number 2. Is your birthday July the 12th? Robert is like, yes, July 12th, 1961. And that's when Michael puts the whole puzzle together. Oh my god, I think you have a twin brother. His name is Eddie. So without wasting a second, Robert and Michael rush into a payphone because it's 1980s and that's how humans communicated back then. So they call Eddie and Robert repeats Michael's questions. Are you adopted? Is your birthday the July 12th of 1961? And which adoption agency handled it? Everything matched perfectly. Both adopted, both same birthday, and both same agency. Louise Wise Services, also known as the agency that makes questionable decisions. After that, Robert refuses to even wait a second more without actually meeting Eddie. So he jumps in the car and drives 2 hours that very same night to meet his long-lost brother. And their reunion basically looked more like a sci-fi movie. 19 years separated, zero idea of the other one knowing each other existed, and suddenly face to face. Robert later said that his eyes were my eyes, and my eyes were his eyes. The world just disappeared and it was Eddie and me. But oh, trust me, this story does not end up with just the two brothers being reunited, no. Because once the news broke, newspapers everywhere, they were like, what the fuck is this? Photos of the identical twins were obviously plastered everywhere. And in one of those articles, a girl sees the picture and it's like, wait a minute, that looks a lot like my best friend. So the girl is like, the two boys in the photo looks exactly like my best friend, right? Who, surprise, surprise, was also adopted. She shows the newspaper to him, which his name was David. And David is like, there was a photo of two dudes that look exactly like me, but that's impossible. And suddenly the twins become triplets. So that day, David decides to skip class, which honestly understandable, and heads home where his adopted mother is waiting for him, already very emotional about the whole thing. She had seen the news too, and she's ready to drop the true bomb. Just like the other two brothers, David's brother was July the 12th. Same hospital, same adoption center, Louise Wise Services, aka the we have might separated your children without telling you. With all these coincidences piling up, like a very bad plot twist, David decides to get in contact with Eddie and Robert, and shortly after the three brothers actually meet. After 19 years apart, the triplets come face to face, and the emotional shock is insane. It's like meeting two versions of yourself, which already sounds very weird, that someone basically just copy-pasted you 3 times. About the reunion, Eddie later said, everything was new, everything was exciting. It was like for the very first time we were swimming together in the ocean or riding a roller coaster. We felt like kids because we had never grown up together. And honestly, at first it was all fun. If the story of the twist had already blown up in the media, adding another kid, well, another boy, was even more crazy. So when it was Triplets, the media went AWOL and the news started going viral. Suddenly the Triplets were everywhere. Talk shows, newspapers, magazines, they even filmed interviews, made appearances, and they even became celebrities. They even had a little moment in the 1985 Madonna film, Desperately Seeking Susan. And while the Triplets, they wanted to make up for lost time, obviously. So the three of them moved into an apartment in New York. And because they clearly had main character energy, they opened a restaurant called the Triplets, which original. The restaurant was a massive hit, earning over $1 million the first year it was open. Things started seeming perfect. They partied together, dated together, hosted family events together, and basically lived like the most crazy sitcom movie. But here's where things start to get a little creepy, because we wouldn't be talking about this if this was a happy reunion case. Once the brothers started talking about their story and comparing their lives, they started finding some weird coincidences, but not really. Not only did they look identical, they also wrestled in high school, smoked the same brand of cigarettes, liked the same foods, had the same taste in women, and the weirdest part, each had an older adoptive sister that was 21 at that time, all the same age. So basically identical lives. Their lives were practically copy-pasted, but there was only one different thing. Their adoptive's family's social class. That was the only exception. Robert's family was upper class. The father was a doctor and had a mother that was a lawyer. Eddie's family was middle class. A dad who was a teacher, so a very suburban life. But David's family was a more modest family, very working class. But the Triplets did not really care about this. Their parents, however, did. Because when their parents originally adopted the kids, no one ever told them that there were other two kids. They were like triplets. No one told them. They thought they were adopting only one children. So the parents, they all went to Louise White's services, demanding answers. So the agency claimed that they separated the boys for these three reasons, and let's hear them. It's too hard to find a family willing to adopt the three of them. They didn't want to overwhelm them by telling them they were siblings, and they definitely did not withhold information on purpose. Absolutely not very trustworthy. The parents reluctantly accepted their weird explanation and started heading home. But fate wasn't done with showing off, you know? It happened to be raining that day, and Robert's father realized that he left his umbrella inside. So he did go back for it and walks in on the agency director popping champagne and celebrating like they just won the lottery. Red flag. For sure. After that bizarre scene, the parents realized the agency was probably hiding something. They did try to sue, but no lawyer wanted to get into that mess. When even lawyers do not want to get involved, that's when you know you are dealing with something very ugly. Years later, even the actual triplets themselves started wondering a couple things. So they started to search for their biological mother. With their suspicions growing, the triplets decide to do the kind of detective work you normally only see in true crime. They head into the New York's library, and they're buried among dusty shelves and microfilm older than the time itself. They find something incredible. Their 3 birth certificates, each listing the name of the biological mother. So they start tracking her down, and they actually meet. And she finally tells them the secret that she was holding for nearly 2 decades. She had gotten pregnant during prom night. Yeah, yes, prom night as the most cliche teen movie origin story ever, at a time that she was obviously very young, overwhelmed, and totally unprepared for what was about to come next. Because guess what? The boys weren't just triplets, they were quadruplets. They had originally been 4 babies, but one of them tragically died after birth. Something that she had to face all alone, with no support, no resources, and no realistic way of herself raising 3 newborn babies. So heartbroken and very scared, she made the very tough decision that she thought it was the best at that time to give the infants up for adoption, believing that they would be placed together. And of course, the adoption agency, Louise Weiss Agency, once again playing the villain, told her absolutely nothing about the true plan for those 3 children, and that they were planning to separate the boys all along. But as shocking as this was, the story was about to get much darker, because the brothers were not separated by chance. This was not a logistic issue. This was not a problem of we couldn't find a family that wanted all 3 of them. No. It was planned intentionally, methodically, for a secret psychological experiment. Let's fast forward to 1995. The truth actually shows up. It surfaces thanks to the journalist Lawrence Wright, that had been working on an article for the New Yorker about identical twins raised apart. While researching for this case, he finds a very weird, mysterious report filed, a psychoanalytic study of a child. And hidden inside this report is a bombshell. A secret study involving twins and triplets intentionally separated at birth and placed in different families to observe how the development changed based on the environment. So basically like lab rats, except, you know, actual humans. And even worse, because all of the children that were in this report, they all came from the same agency, Louise Weiss Services, the same agency that handled the triplets adoption. The whole project had been thought about this Austrian-born psychoanalyst, Dr. Peter Neuborner. Neubor? I don't know how you say that name. A man who apparently looked at babies and thought, I wonder what would happen if I just scattered them around. Like they are, I don't know, Pokemon cards. So Dr. Peter ran the research under the direction of the Child Development Center, which later did merge with the Jewish Board of Family and Children Services. So that would ensure that Dr. Peter had access to his research files, to his research subjects. So Louise Weiss Services deliberately placed the triplets in different homes, in different socioeconomic background, just as a study. It wasn't really fate, it wasn't coincidence, it wasn't just bad luck, you know? It was an experiment, designed in secret, buried for decades, and carried out on real children that had no idea their entire lives were being manipulated. And of course, the triplets and the adoptive families were not chosen at random. The whole purpose of the experiment was to actually discover how genetics influence personality when children were raised in different socioeconomic backgrounds. That's why each boy was placed in different social class, upper, middle, and lower. The researchers wanted to observe how much of a person comes from nature or how much from nurture, and whether the brothers would develop similar traits or show dramatic differences based on their upbringing. And to reach their perfect little science fair dream, the doctor and his team conducted years of monitoring. Yes, years. But here's the part that makes it a little extra sinister. They never told the adopted parents the real purpose of their visits. Every few months, a group of scientists would show up at the boys' home, giving them IQ tests, personality tests, and observation tests, interviews, and even filming them. The adoptive families thought this was just a routine follow-up after adoption. They had no idea their children were literally being studied like they were rats with Hello Kitty pajamas. And soon enough, evidence actually emerged showing the triplets were not the only ones affected by this case. Other pairs of identical twins had also been separated at birth and secretly monitored as well. When journalist Lawrence Wright discovered this, he immediately contacted the brothers to tell them the truth behind the separation, the real reason that they had been split apart. Obviously, the brothers were horrified. They couldn't help but compare the experiments to the one that the Germans did, And they openly called the project barbaric, which it was. Robert put it this way: they called us subjects, but we are victims. There is a big difference. They treated us like laboratory rats, but we are humans. Who would be evil enough to do something like this? You can't play with human lives. We should have grown up together. Instead, we were torn apart for science. But what happened to the experiments? What conclusions did the researchers got? Well, absolutely none that was known of, at least. Because after the truth came out, everyone involved in the study did everything possible to keep it a secret. All the files from the study were sealed and archived at the Yale University with restricted access until the year 2066. Yes, they are keeping the research locked up for decades, like it's the secret formula of Coca-Cola. Naturally, this infuriated the brothers, because it would to anyone, who fought for years to have the documents unsealed. David later said, "I don't want to multiply what they did. They did all this just to hide the research in a dusty library where no one can touch them." The mastermind behind the study, the doctor, died in 2008 without even speaking about the research ever again. No apology, no explanation, nothing, nada. And sadly, even though you thought maybe the reunion was happy at the beginning, the consequences of the experiment actually surfaced. Despite their strong connections, deep psychological wounds remain. Their relationship is strained over time, specifically after they opened the restaurant of the triplets, working side by side together. Their different upbringings clash a little bit, and they always say do not mix family with, work. And sometimes that's true, other times it works, but usually problems. They did have entirely different ways of handling conflict, responsibility, and handling decisions, so they were clashing a lot. So Robert eventually went out of the business. David and Eddie felt a little abandoned, and Eddie, the one that was the most fragile emotionally, was hit the hardest. He fell into a very severe depression, was hospitalized, and shortly after being released, he went home, took a gun, and tragically ended his life. So, at the end of the story, there is someone dead. So this was a very devastating outcome that was believed to be linked to the trauma of being separated, used and studied for so long without the actual consent. So in 2018, the documentary of the three identical strangers was released, that it's now available on Netflix, and I did watch it, and it was very good, and I recommend it always, which brought worldwide attention back to the story. Thanks to pressure from Robert and David, the filmmakers managed to get 11,000 pages of the experiment files, but most of the pages were heavily censored, revealing almost nothing on those pages. So the full truth, the complete details of the study, will remain hidden until 2066, when Yale is legally required to release the documents. And obviously the triplets were not the only victims in the story. There were others, twin siblings, whose lives were reshaped by the same exact social experiment. And tragically, by the time the files are fully unsealed, many of them may be no longer alive to learn why their lives were tampered like this. And well, that was the very tragic story. A shocking reunion, a disturbing experiment, a tragic aftermath, and a mystery that won't be solved for another 40 years. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know if you want more cases like this ones, because these ones are more like creepy experiment vibe, which is still crime. But I don't know if you prefer the actual true crime of murder and stuff. So let me know. Thanks for watching, and remember, do your skincare, and if you don't end up like a glazed donut at the end of it, you're not doing it right. Bye bye!